Is the F1 title fight already over? The 2026 Formula One season has officially begun, and could it already be over? Did Mercedes and George Russell just set the scene for the rest of the 2026 season at the Melbourne Grand Prix? George Russell won the Australian Grand Prix, and Mercedes delivered a 1-2 finish with Kimi Antonelli coming in second. Ferrari scored a respectable double, third and fourth, and Verstappen fought hard from the back of the grid. McLaren, well, they lost Piastri before the race even started. But there was one moment in this race that may have already shaped the early championship fight, suggesting it could already be over. I'll come back to that in a minute, because today I'm breaking down the race, what it means for every team, the biggest winners and losers, the top F1 news stories from the last 24 hours, what teams must fix before China, and I'm going to update the Championship Readiness Index, where one team dropped further down the index than they or you might have expected. Who was it? Stick around to find out. Let's get into it. Race review. Melbourne gave us exactly what you expect from the opening race of a new Formula One era. Absolute chaos. Early position changes. Teams still learning how these new cars behave. George Russell started from pole and immediately faced pressure from Charles Leclerc. Behind them, the midfield battle was intense. But the key thing about this race wasn't just speed. It was decision-making. And that brings us back to the moment we mentioned at the beginning. Lap 12. A Red Bull retirement triggered a virtual safety car. Mercedes reacted instantly. Russell and Antonelli pitted. Ferrari, however, they stayed out. That decision saved Mercedes roughly 10 seconds of race time compared with a normal stop. And from that moment onwards, the race effectively swung in Mercedes' favour. Russell controlled the race from the front and secured his victory. But the biggest story isn't just the result. It was the execution. Mercedes didn't just have pace. They reacted faster. What this means for each team after the Melbourne Grand Prix. Mercedes leaves Melbourne looking like the most complete team on the grid. They had pole position. They had race victory, and it was a flawless execution. That's exactly what a championship contender should look like at the start of a regulation reset. Ferrari looked genuinely competitive. Leclerc fought Russell early and had an excellent start. Hamilton finished fourth and was looking very strong at the finish. And they had a very strong points haul, one of their best in the last few seasons. But Ferrari lost the race on strategy yet again. If Ferrari improves its race execution, it remains a serious threat. McLaren. Now, here's something most fans might have missed. McLaren didn't just lose points in Melbourne. They lost something more important. Oscar Piastri crashed on the reconnaissance lap before the race even began. He didn't even get to the grid. And that means one thing for McLaren. One of their cars that never even started, never even got any usable data. And the driver, Oscar, didn't get any race experience at all. And in a new regulation era, that means McLaren lost an entire race worth of development data and experience. Every lap teaches engineers something new about the car. McLaren lost that learning opportunity. That could matter far more than points in the long run. No, Red Bull had a messy weekend. Max Verstappen recovered from the back of the grid to finish sixth. That in itself is an impressive drive. But Red Bull cannot rely on recovery races if they want to fight Mercedes for the championship. Qualifying execution needs to improve quickly. And given that they had one car that didn't even finish, they too are in desperate need to get more race data. Aston Martin struggled. No surprises there. It was even discussed before the race. The team left Melbourne without scoring any points, but again, no surprise. And the car still appears difficult to drive. Right now, Aston Martin looks like a team still trying to understand the regulations, let alone a car. They are not a team fighting at the front, and I don't expect them to have a very good year at all. The midfield. There were several strong midfield performances. Oliver Behrman scored valuable points for Haas. Arvid Lindblad impressed, delivering points for Racing Bulls, and Gabriel Bortoleto scored Audi's first points. Those three guys had a great race. The early midfield results, well, they can shape the development battle over the season. And remember, championship positions at the end of the season are critical to how much money these teams will get heading into 2027. And that is going to be critical for further development of their cars. Who were the winners and who were the losers? The biggest winners obviously were Mercedes. George Russell owned the weekend. He owned the weekend, and I don't think anybody had any doubts that he would win. Kimi Antonelli, he had his troubles, crashing out at the end of FP3 and only just getting into qualifying 1 thanks to Max Verstappen's accident. Although, once he got in, he showed his talent. The rookie drivers scored points and Antonelli had his best finish in Formula One. The biggest losers, McLaren. They lost a full race of data. That is going to hurt Oscar Piastri's garage more than Lando. But overall, it is also a really, really bad start to the season for the world champions. Red Bull, poor qualifying thanks to Max Verstappen going off. And they have reliability issues, obviously, with Hajar's car having to be withdrawn due to a power unit problem. Aston Martin. I think we're going to be talking about these guys as being losers for the next 3 to 4 races at a minimum, but I don't want to talk it down too much. They are struggling to find performance, but they are being completely transparent, and that is important. But needless to say, they didn't have a good weekend. Here's hoping, heading into China, that they're going to get some more positive results in the work that's being done with Honda. Overnight news. Debate over the 2026 regulations is happening. Several drivers have come out and criticised the heavy energy management focus of the new cars. George Russell has defended the new era, obviously because he's winning and the car's great, and has asked critics to give the regulation time. Obviously, give it a year so he can win the World Championship. The debate will continue throughout the season, I have no doubt, whilst the bigger teams, in particular McLaren and Red Bull, struggle to be competitive. Piastri, well, he apologised to Australian fans, and so he should. Oscar Piastri apologised after crashing out before the race even began. In fact, he crashed out in a way which shows that he is still coming to terms with the car. He acknowledged that it injected 100 kilowatts of additional power for no reason. It can only mean that the power unit and the electronics within that car are still not yet there. It highlights how tricky the new cars can be, especially on cold tyres. And I think what happened to him is a warning to all the drivers in the next few races. Formula One needs drivers like Max Verstappen to stay in the sport. And if these new regulations are going to create cars that are not fun for people like him to drive, then it's going to turn fans away. What the teams must fix before China? Well, China becomes the first confirmation race of the season. As we know, Melbourne was a litmus test. Mercedes must confirm tyre durability. They were unsure about tyre degradation throughout the Melbourne race, but in the end, they made a really great choice to stay out. Ferrari, all they need to do is sharpen their strategy. McLaren must recover lost development data and get both cars through the next race. And Red Bull, they just got to fix qualifying. Max looked fast and Isaac looked fast, so all they need is to have a good qualifying, get to the front, and then have good reliability. And Aston Martin, well, they really just got to solve the basics and get that car to a point where both drivers can sit in it and be comfortable. Now, in my last podcast, I mentioned that I'm going to create a Championship Readiness Index, which I showed. Now, I did mention earlier that one team dropped further down the list than anybody would have expected. So, revealing the ranking, and then we'll talk about which team that is. Coming in 11th, Aston Martin. They are at the bottom. They got a long way to go. Closely followed by Cadillac, who I think had a really great weekend. They got one car through the race, and unfortunately, Bottas had to retire his. Williams, disappointing. Audi, very good showing. Unfortunately, Hülkenberg didn't make the grid, but Bortoleto got them points. Haas walked away with points again. Racing Bulls, great drive from the young rookie Lindblad. Alpine looked strong. Both cars looked strong. Red Bull, Max looked fast, and Isaac looked fast until he had to retire. McLaren, they need to sort out whatever is going on with the software. Ferrari, very strong. Just sort out their strategy. And number one, of course, Mercedes. Not just the fastest team, but they were the most complete team. The team that surprised me, though, and dropped right down was Williams. They had a very disappointing weekend. And I can say, without any doubt that James Vowles would be devastated by what happened. There is a long way to go. This is the first race of the season, and I am sure that Williams will be back closer to the top of the midfield, if not competing with the likes of McLaren and Red Bull for the third and fourth positions. And clearly will be Mercedes and Ferrari at the top. Here's my bold call. If Mercedes delivers another double podium in China, they immediately become the early championship favourite. Because in a regulation reset, the team that learns fastest often wins. And they are so far in front of everybody that they have time and space in their favour just to continue getting better whilst everyone else plays catch up. So here's the question for you. Who is the real championship favourite after Melbourne? Mercedes, Ferrari, or is Red Bull still the team to beat? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this Formula One analysis, don't just hit the like, subscribe to catch all the latest updates, analysis and news, because next episode we'll find out if China confirms what Melbourne just revealed. This is All Motorsports Podcast, and I'll see you in the next one.